Good morning, Year 9, and welcome to your next lesson on poetry. Hi, hello. Okay, so this morning we are looking at romantic poetry. Now, before you start going, oh, lovey-dovey romance, it's not that kind of romantic. This is romantic poetry with a capital R. So before we start reading this particular poem, I think it's a good idea to give you a bit of background as to what romantic actually means. And there's a picture here on the screen of a chap standing at the top of a mountain or a sort of craggy outcrop, and he's looking out over this amazing landscape. So the Romantic movement was a particular at a particular time in history. It was in the sort of late 18th and early 19th centuries, so just kind of creeping into the beginning of the Victorian era. And it was a way of thinking, like a philosophy, that spanned not just poetry but also other forms of writing, politics, art, ideas about religion as well, ideas about the way we should live our lives. And this picture here shows that picture I just showed you there of the chap on the craggy outcrop, and there he is looking out over this majestic, beautiful, natural scenery. And then on the right hand side, kind of the same pose, the same posture, but this time this man is looking out over a grey city filled with smog and smoke and pollution. And so the Romantic movement, as you can probably guess, was a reaction to the Industrial Revolution. Now, if you don't know what the Industrial Revolution is, you can Google it, look it up. But it was basically when sort of steam power, steam engines, the idea of mechanising, building factories, all of that was, great advances in science and engineering. And but what that did mean was that people moved out of the countryside and into the towns. And there was a lot of sudden wealth being made by people who could afford to build factories and pay people very little amount of money to work for them, and inequality became greater and greater and greater, with people at the top become richer, people at the bottom becoming poorer, and people sort of trapped, working class people kind of trapped in this really unpleasant kind of polluted, smog-ridden world of cities and greyness and your life being controlled by the clock, as opposed to working the land and being at one with nature. So the Romantic poets did not like the Industrial Revolution. They didn't like what's on the right hand side here. They wanted it to be like it was on the left hand side. So key ideas that crop up in Romantic poetry is the idea of the power of nature. A lot of Romantic poems deal with the fact that although humans can try and control nature by building cities and building dams, to stop water from flowing, and actually nature is always going to be more powerful than man. We sort of live for a very short period of time, and we're born and we die, but nature carries on. You can kind of see that at the moment with the lockdown that's been going on, people using their cars less, people polluting the planet less. All sorts of wildlife has sprung up that we haven't noticed before. The canals in Venice are full of fish that you couldn't see before because the boats aren't going up and down the canals with their engines all the time. So the power of nature. The idea of the imagination, okay, your individual imagination is what makes you. It's very powerful. The idea that every individual person in the world is of equal status. We all have the power in our minds. Of course, in the real world, there's a very strict hierarchy, and some people are deemed to be more important than other people. The Romantic poets wanted everyone to be viewed the same way. Revolution in France at the time, the French Revolution was going on, and the poor people, the peasants, the normal working class people, had had enough of the inequality, and they rounded up their royal family and their members of the nobility and chopped off their heads with guillotines. The Romantic poets were all for that revolution, let's get power to the people. They were also quite concerned with the world of children and believed that children should be children. I'm sure back in year 8 or even maybe year 7 we read The Chimney Sweep, and the Romantic movement was very concerned that children should be allowed to be children and shouldn't be sent to work, at 3 years old, shoved up chimneys, that kind of thing. And also they spoke for people who are marginalised in society, so people who are on the margins. So that would be poor people, women, people who didn't own land, people who didn't have important jobs, people who weren't educated, people who for whatever reason weren't as accepted in society as other people. It had a very significant effect on politics, the Romantic movement, and actually it got people thinking in a bit more of a liberal way, in a bit more of a socialist way, actually. Anti-conservatism, anti sort of land ownership, and pro, people coming together. So, quite a revolutionary, cool group of people. Now, the poem we're going to be reading is one called Sudden Shower. It's by one of the well-known Romantic poets, John Keats, who was known for his poems about nature, but also quite political. And what you're going to do today is actually write an analysis. And in order to do that, we need to SALSA. Okay, sorry. I don't mean the dip, salsa, and I don't mean the dance, salsa. I mean this. SALSA. Subject, attitude, language, structure, ambiguity. Now, I've given you a PDF of a worksheet that has this table on it. And basically, if you fill in these boxes, that is essentially your poetry analysis. I think SALSA is a really good way to work through a poem. It starts easy and gets really hard. So if you manage to get all the way to the end, you're looking at good marks. So when we read this poem, we're going to be thinking about the subject. What is the title? What does the title immediately make you think of? And how does the alliteration or the assonance or sibilance, whatever it is, how does that add to the meaning? Then the first A of SALSA is attitude. Okay, so it's attitude, kind of tone of voice, opinion, mood. What kind of tone of voice is used? What atmosphere is created? So you just need to think, first of all, is it positive? Is it negative? Is it happy? Is it sad? Is it peaceful? Is it angry? And you can get a vibe for that from your first reading. L is language. This is all the really meaty stuff. This is all the metaphors, similes, imagery, pathetic fallacy, interesting adjectives and words and phrases, everything that we were looking at in the previous two poems. And in this poem in particular, there's lots of imagery to do with nature and comparisons of people with nature. There is also pathetic fallacy and quite a lot of personal pronouns. I, me, you, we, us. Those are personal pronouns. So how does that create meaning? Okay, the second S gets a bit more complicated still. We're looking at structure. So structure is those things like caesura and enjambment. So caesura, where you have punctuation in the middle of a line of poetry, which sort of interrupts the rhythm, and enjambment is when you have no punctuation at the end of a line of poetry and it sort of flows on to the next line. Do you remember that first poem we looked at, Home, and it was the people running down the street and there was just enjambment all the way through, wasn't there? Well, until about 2/3 of the way through there was a full stop. You could finally catch your breath. Structure also is to do with rhyming. Is there a rhyme scheme? And also the format, the form of the poem. Is it free verse or is it very rigid? Is it structured? How is it laid out? We'll have a look at that. And then the final A, top marks. And I know that some of you are already on this. So this poem is called Sudden Shower. After you've analysed it all, you'll need to ask yourself, is it ambiguous? More than one meaning. That's all ambiguity means. Does this poem have more than one meaning? Is it just about someone who's sheltering from a storm, a sudden shower? Or is it about something more, bearing in mind what we know about the Romantic poets? They didn't like the Industrial Revolution. They wanted to speak up for people who were marginalised in society. They were quite political. They were quite keen on the power of nature and revolution. So that's quite a lot to take in, isn't it? What we're going to do is just read through it, first of all, one go, all the way through, and then we're going to look at filling a bit of this in. If you are able to have a printout of the poem, that would be great. If you can't, don't worry, but it would be good if you could make some notes on a bit of paper, get a pen and paper and make some notes on it as we go. Okay, so let's just read it through. Sudden shower. Black grows the southern sky, betokening rain, and humming hive bees homeward hurry by. They feel the change, so let us shun the grain and take the broad road while our feet are dry. Aye, there are some dropples moistened on my face and pattered on my hat. 'Tis coming nigh. Let's look about and find a sheltering place. The little things around, like you and I, are hurrying through the grass to shun the shower. Here stoops an ash tree. Hark! The wind gets high. But never mind. This ivy, for an hour, rain as it may, will keep us dryly here. That little wren knows well his sheltering bower, nor leaves his dry house, though we come so near. Hope you did your vocab on Monday, because you had lots of words in there like betokening and shun and dropples and bower. So as I read it through again, when we analyse it and annotate it, I'll just go through what those words mean. Okay, so first of all, we need to think about the subject, the attitude, the language. So like I said, if you do have a copy of it, get it out now. If you don't, then just grab a pen and paper. I've got my copy here, Sudden Shower. So I'm going to be making my notes on here, and you can do yours on a separate piece of paper. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is look at the title, Sudden Shower. S and sh. Okay, so those two sounds together is what we call sibilants. Okay, it's s and sh sounds, and it's from the Greek for snake. And I look at this and I think sudden shower. What noise does rain make? Rain sort of goes shh, doesn't it? So I'm going to scribble on here, the sibilants makes it sound like the rain. Isn't my handwriting appalling? Okay, it sounds like the rain. Okay, that's the first thing I'm going to say. Second thing I'm going to say about the title itself is that it is just a shower. So this it's not a storm. Okay, and because it came on suddenly, maybe it will pass quite quickly. So perhaps this is something that's not something that we have to worry about particularly. It's just a little rain shower. It came suddenly. It'll probably leave suddenly. So it's not anything particularly to worry about. And I think the sh sibilant sounds creates a sense of calm and peace. Sudden shower? I don't know. I think it sounds quite peaceful, if I'm honest. The sh sounds. Okay. I'm just going to fold that bit over. There we go. And we get onto the poem proper now. So, black grows the southern sky, betokening rain. One of the first things you can do when you're looking at a poem is look at the final word on each line and see if it rhymes. And if it rhymes, you can write down what the rhyme scheme is. So rain, we will call that A. So anything else that rhymes with rain, we will call A. Rain, grain, that'll do. Next one, we've got by, we'll call that B. Anything that rhymes with by, we'll give it the letter B. So by, dry, nigh, I, high. Okay, quite a lot. The next one we've got is face, so let's call that C. Face, place, that'll do. Then we've got shower, D, hour, and bower. And then finally, we've got here and near, EE. So this is our rhyme scheme, A, B, A, B, C, B, C, B, D, B, D, E, D, E. So there is a rhyme scheme of sorts. Rain, by, grain, dry, face, nigh, place, I. So we've got these four together, and then these four together, and then these last 6 lines. Shower, high, hour, here, bower, near. So this bit rhymes with the first bit, and then this bit rhymes with the last bit. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all. But you can see there is a definite rhyme scheme. The poet here, John Clare, has deliberately chosen a rhyme scheme. And he's deliberately looked at which words he wants to rhyme together. And the fact, I think, that he's put the first 4 together, the next 4 together, the last 4, hour here, bower near, together. And then we've got this kind of moment here where it sort of changes, the rhyme scheme changes, isn't it? So where we've got a change in the poem, we can call that the volta. And that is where perhaps the true meaning of the poem comes through. Right. Should we look at some language, see what we can pick out? Okay, the first word is black. What does black suggest? Connotations, usually in literature, of danger, of darkness, of perhaps death, danger, darkness, perhaps death. Okay, so the tone that is being set straight away isn't particularly calm. It actually sounds a bit threatening, doesn't it? Black grows the southern sky, betokening rain. So you could say that pathetic fallacy is being used here. So the weather is reflecting the mood. This is a chap out on a lovely country walk, and all of a sudden the sky starts to get dark and rain is coming. Ooh, we know something bad is going to happen. And then we've got this lovely bit of alliteration on here. The humming hive bees homeward hurry by. I love that. Humming hive bees homeward hurry by. It almost sounds like whispering. It's like a kind of cute, quiet buzzing noise. These bees are quite clever. They feel the change. And then we've got this comma in the middle of this line here, a bit of caesura. They feel the change. So let us shun the grain. So it's almost like he's saying, let's be led by these bees. These whispering, busy bees seem to know more than we do. And he uses this personal pronoun, us. You and me together. It's quite inclusive, isn't it? And he's suggesting that we should perhaps let nature tell us what to do. Ooh, I like that. Let nature guide us. Okay, so we should let nature guide us. This is what we should do. So we should shun the grain. What should we do? We should take the broad road while our feet are dry. And then he says, aye, there are some dropples moistened on my face. So this is almost like, this is proof now that the bees were right. The bees were right all along. The bees were correct. There is rain. Ah, yes, there's rain on my face. And it's on my hat. 'Tis coming nigh. Okay, the rain is coming and there's almost nothing we can do to stop it. Let's look about and find a sheltering place. Again, we've got this personal pronoun, let's, which is short for let us. Let us look about and find a sheltering place. Now this next line I think is quite important. The little things around, like you and I, are hurrying through the grass to shun the shower. So we've got repetition of shun and repetition of, you know, the idea of hurrying here. So we should copy the bees, we should shun the shower. The bees are hurrying, and now all these other little things are hurrying, and they are going to shun the shower. And all these little things are just like you and I. So what is John Clare saying here about how important human beings are? About how important humans are compared to nature? Is he saying that we are more important than these bees and these insects? No. He's saying these tiny little insects are just as important as us. We are the same as them. Okay, so we are all the same. Okay, I don't know whether he's actually saying that humans are the same as insects. I wonder if this is a metaphor for something else. Okay, so the bees can feel the rain coming on, and he can feel the rain coming on. Everyone's going to hide, to find a sheltering place and to shun the shower. So much sibilance in this poem, isn't there? Shh, 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 shh. And then he says, here stoops an ash tree. Another shh, shh sound. Hark, listen. The wind gets high. So this, we said that the change in the rhyme scheme could mean a change in the mood, in the meaning, and actually now the wind gets high. Okay, so it is starting to become a bit more stormy. It's not just a little gentle shower going pitter-patter. The wind is starting to blow, so it's getting stormy. And so I think these last 4 lines here are going to be quite important, because look what this line starts with. It starts with a but, and in poetry we love a but. But this is where he's going to make his point. Okay, here comes the point. Here is the main point. So this main point that he's coming to now is indicated in a couple of ways. We've got a change in the rhyme scheme, and we've got the word but here, and we've also got a change in the weather, the pathetic fallacy. So three things are indicating the change. We've got the change in the rhyme scheme, the change in the weather getting more stormy, and also the word but. So these last 4 lines are going to tell us the whole point of this poem, which is a sort of little anecdote, isn't it? And the whole point of this is, never mind. Never mind. It doesn't matter that it's raining, it doesn't matter that it's getting windy and that it's stormy, because we have found somewhere to shelter. We have found somewhere where we can stay dry and safe. He says, in fact, there's quite a big pause here with a semicolon in the middle. It's not just a comma, it's a semicolon here. He says, this ivy, another pause, for an hour, rain as it may, will keep us dryly here. And I think this is interesting. Rain as it may, okay, so it might rain really heavily, it might become a thunderstorm, it might become a really massive lightning storm, but we'll be safe here for about an hour. Let's face it, most storms don't last as long as an hour. So it can rain as hard as it likes outside. We are going to be okay. We're going to stay dry. Us, together. You and I, us, we. And then the very last couple of lines. All this imagery to do with nature. That little wren knows well his sheltering bower. So there's a little bird also sheltering here from the rain. And this, he knows it well. This little bird comes here all the time. And even when these human beings go into his shelter, he doesn't leave his dry house, though we come so near. So this little bird isn't afraid when the people in the poem come into where he's sheltering, which is really unusual. The wren is it's known for being a particularly shy and tiny little bird. And normally, if you're in your garden or a park and you walk up to a tiny bird in a tree or a squirrel or something, it will run away. But this one doesn't run away. It's like this bird knows that these humans aren't a threat and that actually we're all in it together. We're all just here sheltering from the storm all together. It's quite deep, isn't it, actually? I wonder if this is just about someone sheltering from the storm or if it's about something more. I'll just get rid of my face for a minute. We can see what that top one is. So you might need to read through the poem a couple of times, but these are the questions I'd like you to answer, and I've given you this worksheet. So subject, what is the title? What does this immediately make you think of? How does the alliteration or assonance? It's not even assonance, is it? It's not assonance. I'm going to change that now. Don't know why I've written that. It's sibilance. There we go. How does this add to the meaning? So I've given you an example here. This is the kind of thing that you can write. So thinking back to what we did when we were annotating it. Hang on, let's get this visualizer back up. What did we write? So we said about the sudden shower. We said because it's sudden, it will pass quickly. It's not a storm. The sibilance, the sh sounds like calm and peace. Okay, so let's get rid of that again. So I've written here, it's not the fact that it's just a shower, in quote marks, suggests that it will pass quickly. It's nothing to worry about. The description of it as sudden could suggest that although it appeared quickly, it will probably go just as quickly. And the sibilance of the sh sound mimics the sound of falling rain, creating a calm mood. Then your first A is attitude. What tone of voice is used? What atmosphere is created? Is it calm and peaceful, or is it angry? Okay, so you know this. This is up to you. I'm not going to give you all the answers. I want you to write down and tell me what tone of voice is used. Is it calm? Is it peaceful? Is it aggressive? He's talking about nature and sheltering, and there's lots of lovely rhyming. I don't think it's particularly aggressive. So language is the next one. There's so much imagery to do with nature. Comparisons of humans with nature, metaphors, similes, pathetic fallacy, alliteration, personal pronouns. We've made loads of notes on all of those. So this is an example of what kind of thing you could write. John Clare, uses lots of nature imagery, drawing our attention to the landscape and the animals in it. So he starts off talking about the sky turning black, and then he zooms in on these bumblebees and the other creatures going through the grass. He uses alliteration, doesn't he, to draw our attention to the humming hive bees who homeward hurry by, repeating this hurrying when describing the little things. The fact that he describes the creatures as being like you and I suggests that he doesn't draw a distinction between humans and nature. He sees them both as equal. Okay, so these little bees are just as important as anyone else. Structure. Is there a rhyme scheme? Yes, there is. We looked at that, didn't we? In quite a bit of detail. So which pairs or words rhyme? Does this make them seem more important? So he's got rain, grain, by, dry, nigh, I, high. Have a think about why he's chosen to end the lines with those particular rhyming pairs, particularly at the end. He's got hour here and bower and near. The fact that they're resting under the bower for an hour, and they're here and they're near nature. They've been brought close together. I think that's quite nice. Think about the personal pronouns. The fact that he says us, we, you and I. It's very inclusive. This isn't a poet who wants to exclude people. He's quite inclusive, isn't he? Also think about the caesura and enjambment. I don't think there is much enjambment or enjambment. I think, yeah, there's punctuation at the end of every line, but there is quite a lot of caesura, so the rhythm is broken up quite a bit. And then the last thing for you to think about, is this poem just about a man sheltering from the rain? If not, what else might it be a metaphor for? So I've written here, on the one hand, this poem is about humans and animals being made equal. They both seek shelter from the rain together. However, this poem could perhaps be a metaphor for what? I'm not going to tell you what I think the answer is for this, but I will just remind you about these romantic poets. They didn't like the idea of the Industrial Revolution. They wanted people to return to nature. Politically, they believed that people should be all treated as equals. I don't know. Perhaps the humans in the poem represent the government or the people in charge, and the bees and the insects represent working class people who don't have a say, don't have any rights, and normally they're just ignored, but actually they do know, they're just as intelligent, and they are no different to the people in charge. Perhaps you could relate this poem to the current situation in the UK today. We've got the government in charge telling us what to do to control the virus, yet some of them are choosing to do whatever they want. We've got the big Black Lives Matter movement at the moment, haven't we, with lots of protests saying actually we should all be equal, there's no one group that's more important than the other. Perhaps, although this poem is a couple of 100 years old, perhaps it is still relevant today. Perhaps the issues that John Clare is talking about, of people being equal and little things being just as important as big things, are still relevant. Ooh. However, rewind. Try and fill in this worksheet. It's on Show My Homework. It's a PDF there for you. If you answer all these questions, and you can use my examples to help you. So if you fill in the other boxes, you answer all those questions, that actually becomes your answer to this essay style question, which is, how does the poet John Clare use, so many mistakes in this PowerPoint, I'm so sorry, I'll change it before I send it out to you. How does the poet John Clare use language, form and structure to create meaning in the poem Sudden Shower? So you're literally looking at language and structure. You're looking at just everything. How does he create meaning? How does he get his message across? How does he manage to convey what he wants to convey? I only need you to write 3 paragraphs, really. I'd like you to have 3 really good quotes that you can then analyse in detail. So, for example, you could talk about the shower, you could talk about the title, you could find 1 quote about language, maybe 1 quote about the structure, or 2 about language, I don't mind, but you need to sort of introduce it, analyse it, have a conclusion. And if you fill in this area here and complete this table, then you will very easily be able to write a full sort of exam essay style response. Okay, quite a lot of information. I've been chatting for half an hour. I'm so sorry. Well done for sticking through to the end of this. Have a go at filling that in. If you're struggling at all or you've got any questions, please do let me know. I've set the deadline for today, please. I'd like you to try and get this finished to me today. If you do submit it tomorrow or even Friday, I'm not going to penalise you for that. I know you're very busy, but I do want everyone, please, to send me something on this. I'm going to stop talking now and let you get on with it. Have a good rest of your day, Year 9. Bye bye.